Welcome back. What are the objectives for this video? We'd like to first subtract two numbers, then we'd like to do an add and subtract problem with several numbers, and then we'd like to add and subtract an algebraic expression. And so we're going to subtract. Our first problem is 4 subtract 7. We need some steps for the subtraction, and the first step is to change the subtraction to addition of the opposite. So change subtraction to addition of the opposite. Addition of opposite. And we better define what we mean by opposite. And so I'm changing colors. Opposite. What does opposite mean? Well, another word for opposite is additive inverse. You might sometimes see it written as additive inverse. But the opposite is, it's just easier to show you what it is. The opposite of, say, -3 is +3. And the opposite of +3 is -3. So that's what we mean by opposite. So the first step is to change subtraction to add, and now we want the opposite of 7, and the opposite of 7 is -7. Okay, we've done step number 1. And then step number 2, now that we have an addition problem, is just to follow the rules for addition. And we discussed those in the last video. So we're going to now just follow the rules for addition. In this problem we have different signs, and so we take the absolute values, subtract them because they're different signs, and we'll get 3. We take the sign of the larger, in this case this 7, and we get -3 for our answer. Okay, let's do another problem. This problem we want to change it to addition. So 3 plus, and the opposite of -5 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. The signs are the same, and so we just add and we get 8. The next problem says find the difference between -4 and -2. We better define what difference means. And difference is just the result of a subtraction, the result of subtract. And so we wanted to rewrite this as a subtract problem. So -4 subtract -2. So to find the difference means -4 subtract -2. And then first step, remember, is to change it to an addition problem of the opposite. The opposite of -2 is +2. We have different signs, so we take absolute values and subtract. We get 2, and we take the sign of the larger. The answer is -2. In the next problem, we are to simplify, and we see the sum and difference, or the add and subtract of several numbers. The first step is to change all subtractions into addition of the opposite, what we've done in previous problems. It's the same first step. Change subtractions to additions of the opposites. And so we look at our problem. The first number is, well, let's read it. -3 plus 2 subtract 4 plus -3 subtract -7. Well, -3, we do have a couple of subtractions, but -3 is not a subtraction. So we just write it plus 2. There's our first subtraction. So we rewrite subtract 4 as plus -4. Then plus -3 is not a subtraction, but the next one is. So we rewrite that as plus a +7. And we've completed the first step. The next step is to group the positives and the negatives. So if you look back at our problem now, it's all addition problems, but we have positive numbers and negative numbers, and we would like to group them. And so the positive numbers, well, there's a 2 and there's a 7, so let's group those two together. 2 plus 7. We're using the commutative and associative property to do this. And we have 3 negatives. And so let's group those negative numbers, -3 and -4 and another -3. They're grouped together, and we've completed that step. I'm going to change colors. And the third step is to add the positives and the negatives. Now that we've grouped them, we would like to add them in their groups. So we're going to add the positives and the negatives. So 2 plus 7, that's 9. Adding the absolute value of the negatives, we get 7 plus 3 is 10. And we use their common sign, which is negative. And then our fourth step is to just add the result. So we want to add a positive 9 and a negative 10. The signs are different, so we take absolute value and subtract. We get a 1, and the sign of the larger is negative. -1 is the answer. Finally, our last problem is to simplify the algebraic expression. And it is -2 subtract 3y plus -x subtract a -4y. The first step in this problem is the same as the first step in the last several problems, and that is to change the subtractions to additions of the opposite. Change subtractions to additions of the opposites. Okay, so we'll go and rewrite this. And -2x, that's not a subtraction. The next one is, so we want to change subtract 3y to plus a -3y, which is the opposite of 3y. The next is not a subtraction. We just write plus -x. And the next one is a subtraction. We write plus, and now the opposite of -4y is positive 4y. The second step is to group like terms. And we, like terms, remember, have the same variable. And we have a variable with an x in it, 2 terms with that. And so let's group those two together. We have a -2x plus a -x. And then we would like to group the terms that have y as the variable. There's a -3y and a positive 4y. So we group those two terms together. We put the -3y in, and then the plus 4y. And then the next step is to add our like terms. Now that we've grouped them together, we want to go ahead and add the like terms. And if you remember, we just take the numerical coefficients and add them. So the -2, we can place a 1 in front of the x, and the signs are the same. So we just add the absolute values and keep the common sign, so we get -3x. The y's, their coefficients are opposite, and so we will take the, we'll subtract the absolute values, and that gives us 1, and we'll keep the sign of the larger, which is the 4y, so we get positive 1y. And that completes that problem. And so we have subtracted our 2 numbers. We did an add and a subtract problem with several numbers, and we added and subtracted an algebraic expression. See ya.